Now I request I'll bring in my guest, and I thank you very much, Peter Frederick. You came. Would you mind if you can introduce your organization? How long you've been working? I was going through all these papers, and I believe it's a very detailed work. Please introduce your organization, and what is the reason you think that if the foreign agencies intervene too much, then America would not have its own weight or own thought? That's what it is.
Well, yes. So, I'm a journalist. I'm a freelance journalist, and I've been focusing on these issues relating to Hindu nationalism and the RSS, the rise of the BJP and Modi in India, and then especially their activities abroad, specifically in the United States, in the political arena. I've been doing that for about 3 or 4 years. I have a track record prior to that of working with the Indian American diaspora on a variety of human rights issues related to India and South Asia, but especially the past 3 or 4 years since Modi came to power, I've heavily focused on this issue. Now, your question is about why these organizations are seeking this place in the political arena.
Yes, please.
Yes. So, well, as you've already covered quite a bit of it, quite in detail. We have people like Dr. Bharat Pai from Illinois, Indiana, Chicago region. We have people like Ramesh Buttada from Texas, Houston. Dr. Bharat Pai is a long-standing member of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, the VHP of America, which is the international wing of India's VHP, which is itself the religious wing of the RSS. And then, of course, Ramesh Buttada is the vice president of HSS of the U.S., and the HSS is the international wing of the RSS. And both of these gentlemen are heavily involved as well in mobilization for the BJP, especially through this organization known as the Overseas Friends of the BJP, which is essentially the international wing of India's ruling Hindu nationalist BJP. Now, their interest in supporting candidates, as you've mentioned, people like Congressman Joe Walsh or people like Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, really ties into the fact that, as you have mentioned, these people, once they're in office, have the ability to derail and sabotage congressional attempts, U.S. congressional attempts, to hold the RSS, the BJP, or Modi himself accountable for human rights violations in India. They have an ability, once they're in office, to paint a glossy picture and improve the public image of the Modi regime in India. And so we saw that especially with Tulsi Gabbard, with Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. As you referenced, she went and in December of 2013, just a few months, about 6 months before Modi and the BJP came into power, Tulsi Gabbard went and she raised her voice against this resolution which had been introduced in the U.S. Congress, this House Resolution 417, which was an attempt to affirm that it was a good decision by the U.S. government to establish this ban on Modi's visa to the U.S., as well as which was an attempt to express concern about the rising violence perpetrated by Hindu nationalists in India. And so she was one of the few people that stepped out of her way and raised her voice against that. And then a few months later, in April of 2014, just 1 month before Modi came to power, she went and she attended this hearing. There was a hearing hosted by a Human Rights Caucus in U.S. Congress, which was a hearing about the plight of religious minorities in India. And it was a last-ditch attempt to draw attention to this issue, to express concern about what India might be like under Modi. And Congresswoman Gabbard attended, and in her own words, she was one of the few voices. She was alone in the room, raising dissent against it. And yet, in her own words, she says that taking just 5 minutes out of her day to go and speak out against that had a huge impact, and that her goal was to prevent the spread of misinformation about Modi. In this context, misinformation from her perspective would be this idea that Modi is affiliated with these violent internationalist groups, that Modi bears responsibility for the pogrom in 2002 in Gujarat, and so forth. And so, when you have people like Gabbard, or you have people like Joe Walsh in office, and they're able to take just even these small steps, which are not a great burden for them to take, but just these small steps to sabotage these attempts at upholding and expressing concern for human rights in India. It really goes a long ways for the Hindu nationalist lobby in the U.S. in helping to secure the position of the Hindu nationalist movement in India, helping to provide them stability, and helping to just generally improve their public image, so that these attempts by Congress to express concern about what's going on never actually see the light of day.
Peter Frederick is with me. He's a freelance journalist and he's been writing. Now, Peter, I understand the human rights condition is not good in there, especially in the Kashmir. Now, the congressmen, do they bring it, or have you ever? I know you ask good questions very boldly to all these representatives as well. Did you ever ask about what is happening in Kashmir in this age, 20th century? Those people are not given. They don't have internet, and the half family is on one side of the Kashmir, half side is Berlin Wall is fallen down, but in Kashmir the half family is on one side, half on other side. They can't see each other. In this technology age, people they call them, they do WhatsApp, they can see each other, but they don't have internet. They are locked down. And here in Canada and in America, of course, we are frustrated in the COVID situation. There are so much mental health issue, and guess about those people, their family, brothers, sisters, mother, parents, they are children and parents, they are separated by in Kashmir and Jammu Kashmir. They can't talk to each other. What kind of condition they are going in, and then line of control violence, very many, and this violence violation is always started by India, always, and civilians die. So have you ever raised your concerns on that as well?
Well, I remember when the annexation of Kashmir occurred on 5 August of last year, and I remember speaking with a large number of Kashmiris in the diaspora who had these tragic, heartrending stories about how, as the lockdown was implemented in Kashmir, as the internet was suspended, phone services were cut, that they had no contact with their family back home for days, weeks at a time. And these, keep in mind, these are people that they told me that they were used to speaking with their family members back in Kashmir on typically a daily basis. And then this annexation came, this lockdown, and they were separated from them, digitally separated from them for weeks on end. Now the situation in Kashmir is that there appears to be no end in sight. It's over a year later. The lockdown continues to one degree or another. Sometimes it's relaxed, sometimes it's increased, sometimes it goes back and forth. There's still not proper internet services provided. There's still this massive increase of troops on the street. And there's also still this issue of how back in August 5, 2019, the entire civil society was mass arrested. We're talking religious leaders, political leaders, even business leaders, local civic leaders. Thousands of people were rounded up, mass arrested, put behind bars, many of them outside of Kashmir. And well over a year later, they still have not faced charges. They're still not being brought to trial. They're still just sitting there rotting behind bars. So this is a major issue of concern, perhaps probably the largest issue of concern in regards to the human rights situation in India right now. And it's ongoing to a large extent. We don't actually know what's happening in Kashmir. Kashmir remains virtually a black hole. Outside of India, the politicians around the world, the media around the world, even the Indian media itself, does not have unrestricted access to Kashmir. And so we don't know what's happening there right now. The worst could be happening for all that we know. But there have been attempts abroad to at least attempt to apply some pressure to India to loosen the restrictions, to take a step back, to allow Kashmiris a little bit of room to breathe more freely. And for instance, we've seen in the U.S. Congress, we saw Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. And Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal is a Indian American.
Yeah, she did very good. I was reading her. My God, she's a wonderful woman.
She's quite an incredible woman, and she's introduced a resolution in the U.S. Congress, which now has approximately 60 or 65 co-sponsors, which seeks to affirm the sentiment of the Congress that India should loosen restrictions in Kashmir and dial back the lockdown and work to uphold human rights. Now, unfortunately, this resolution on Kashmir that has been introduced by Jayapal is not being brought to committee, specifically to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, for discussion before it would be taken to the House floor for a vote. And the reason it's not being brought is because the current chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Eliot Engel from New York, is refusing to allow a dialogue on this resolution.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
So yes.
No, but why she's refusing to have a dialogue on this?
Well, that's a good question, and this is an interesting congressman, especially in context of what we've been talking about this support for politicians, for congressional representatives by the RSS in America, by their representatives in America. So Eliot Engel has been one of the politicians who has tended to lean very strongly pro-India. And when I say pro-India, I support a strong U.S.-India relationship, but I support a strong U.S.-India relationship that is based on conditions. And the conditions must be that both countries must be properly recognizing and respecting human rights. And that before anything else happens, especially before trade deals or especially before defense deals, that these conditions must be met. So what the Hindutva lobby, the RSS lobby in America, has for years been attempting to do is to support and prop up and encourage congressional representatives to endorse an unconditional U.S.-India relationship, where the U.S. Engages with India and provides funds to India, provides armaments to India, provides favorable trade deals to India, and you name it, without any conditions and no matter what India does, no matter how India treats its people, or no matter how India treats the Kashmiri people. So this Congressman Eliot Engel, he has been one of the congressmen that is actually straddling the fence, and he's actually taking some flack from the Hindutva RSS lobby in America. And the reason is because on the one hand, He has squashed this bill, this resolution by Pramila Jayapal. He's refusing to give it a hearing. But on the other hand, actually, just this month, he was one of two people in the House that signed a letter to India's Ministry of External Affairs, expressing great concern about Kashmir and about the human rights condition there. So he's an interesting situation.
It means neutral, definitely. They protect the. My question to you is about the Citizenship Act in India. Now, in the beginning, it's been people think that to reject it or to oppose it, even Hindus were out on the road. You know how many rights were there. At the moment, people think that it only affects the Muslims, but it is being said that it is going to affect Christians. It is going to affect Sikhs as well. Is that right? You must have done homework on that as well.
Well, I think that two things about that. One is the Citizenship Amendment Act is designed to work in concert as a complementary part to the National Register of Citizens, which has been proposed but has not actually been enacted yet. And the BJP in India has been very clear that these two pieces of legislation are supposed to work together. So the Citizenship Amendment Act, it provides an easy path to citizenship for refugees from, I believe, 4 different countries in South Asia, as long as they are not Muslim. And it names virtually every other religion, but specifically excludes Muslims. Now, the problem with that, especially when we come into discussing if it could affect Christians or Sikhs or people of other religious groups, is the problem with it is the principle. Because in principle, what the Citizenship Amendment Act does is it sets a precedent for basing the acquisition of Indian citizenship on religion. And once that's been done, once that precedent has been set, then it's anybody's guess what the next religion might be that will be excluded.
So this means today people think these are only for the Muslims, but the religion part is the most vital and important part in it. Even the Christians and Sikhs who are born abroad, once they go, the religion section, they will be rejected over there. Is that right?
That's potentially the case.
It's a potential. There's a potential for this. You're right.
There's a potential. And in context of that, I would say that it's particularly important to always keep in mind the ideology of the RSS, which is very well known and has been very clearly articulated. And the RSS, since its earliest days, since when it was first founded in the 1920s, 1930s, it has a stated agenda of eliminating Muslims and Christians from India. And it also has a stated agenda of assimilating Buddhists and Sikhs into the Hindu religion. So its ultimate goal is to create this homogenous society where there is nobody in the country but Hindus.
This is Peter Frederick. You know what? This bill, what it is, at the moment, it is going to directly hurt Muslims, but later on, the religious part is very important part. Even the Hindus are against this because in the long run, Sikhs and all other religions will also suffer. People from other religions will also suffer. Things do not happen overnight. There are few things which happen over the period of time. You know that when the Article 370 came into being in 1947-48, there was a war. उसके बाद India went to United Nations. वहाँ से उन्होंने कहा कि जी कश्मीरियों को हक देने के लिए आप वहाँ पे रेफरेंडम करा दें. इंडिया ने कहा जी अच्छा हम तब फौजें वापस लेके जाएंगे जब ये रेफरेंडम करवाएंगे. पाकिस्तान कहता था take your army back, then we will get the referendum, because in the presence of your army there will be a pressure on people of Kashmir in Jammu Kashmir. And then over the period of time 1951 83 और period आता now ultimately उन्होंने 370 article को ख़त्म करके and they said Kashmir is ours. So it didn't happen. India खुद then when this Pakistan में attack हुआ था कश्मीर के ऊपर, ये जो हमारे KPK से ट्राइब्स ने जब यहाँ पे गए थे, क्योंकि वो यही था कि वहाँ पे रेफरेंडम होना चाहिए, तो इंडिया इटसेल्फ वेंट टू यूनाइटेड नेशन, और यूनाइटेड नेशन जो हल दिया था उस हल को उन्होंने कहा था आप अभी रेफरेंडम करा दें, बट पाकिस्तान कहता था कि अपन भी फौजें निकाल लो तो हम रेफरेंडम करा देते हैं. तो बहरहाल आज जो हुआ इट इज़ ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. 49, 47, 48 के बाद आज देखें 73 साल के बाद अल्टीमेटली 73 years आफ्टर 73 years दे टुक ऑफ दिस जो आर्टिकल 370 है और 37A 35A इनको ख़त्म कर दिया उन्होंने. तो अभी ये जो सिटीजनशिप एक्ट है इसमें भी आप देखिएगा इन द लॉन्ग रन अदर communities will suffer because RSS is very active, and they are not only active in India, and you know what, every country has their agencies और काम करती हैं, but India की जो RSS is very active. By the way, do you know how many members are there in America? I know you must have done very detailed homework on this. How many members for RSS? I think there is a membership in America.
Yes, so, well, we don't actually even know how many members of RSS there are in India itself.
No, in America, in America.
I understand. In India, the RSS is secretive. They do not publicly declare, but there's an estimated 6 million members of RSS in India. In America, there, I believe, are about 140, 150 branches or shakas of the HSS, the international wing of RSS. As far as the actual number of members, that's impossible to say. They don't issue that information. One can only estimate based on what's known about the number of branches. Now, the RSS in America, the HSS, has been very active through this organization, the Overseas Friends of the BJP. And in 2014, when the BJP was up for election, the Overseas Friends of the BJP, which is largely basically is controlled by the HSS, they mobilized, I believe, 2,000 or more activists, volunteers, to physically travel from America to India to serve as boots on the ground, as campaign workers for the BJP. So they were at least able to mobilize from America to India a couple of thousand volunteers. At the same time, they had people like Ramesh Buttada in Houston, the vice president of HSS, who was responsible for organizing approximately 700 people for a phone bank where they worked, in his words, around the clock to call back to India to motivate voters in India to support the BJP. And his Buttada's phone bank in Houston was only one of several phone banks. There were others in Florida, and I believe up in the northern part of the states, and places like that as well. So, based off of those numbers, the size of the HSS membership or the membership of affiliated groups in the U.S., it's certainly in the several thousands.
Peter Frederick, I am very thankful to you. Peter Frederick की एक book है. I would like to request it. By the way, do you speak Urdu and Punjabi as well? You're working with us. नहीं.
मैं पंजाबी बोलता कोई गल नहीं.
That's it.
कोई गल नहीं.
ये वंडरफुल पर्सन. पीटर फ्रेडरिक जो है, जैसे इन्होंने कहा कि ही इज़ ऑथर भी हैं, जर्नलिस्ट हैं, फ्रीलांसर हैं. इनकी एक किताब है ऑन राइज ऑफ हिंदू नेशनलिज्म नाउ अवेलेबल इन इंडिया. राइज ऑफ हिंदू नेशनलिज्म. और आप हैव यू एवर वॉच सम ऑफ द वीडियोज, सो ब्रूटल एंड क्रूअल वीडियोज वेयर these young men, they are beating people and just make them to say that just say that your religion is bad and this our religion is good. Have you seen some of those videos where they burn those girls and men and they all kind of brutality? Have you seen those?
I have certainly seen some of those. Those are absolutely gut wrenching.
Oh my
One of the
God.
most recent that I saw was a video of a young man who was suspected of transporting beef or cow meat, and he was yanked from his truck. He was beaten with a hammer, and I've seen some of these where you have just these mobs of these young people, and I would only say mobs of ignorant, uneducated young people. Which is no excuse for them, but it's heart-wrenching heart-rending on both sides, because on one side you have this victim who's suffering so horribly. On the other side, most of the time these perpetrators, are young teenagers living in poverty. They've been raised and brainwashed in this kind of like hateful environment. And it's just, one just shakes one's head. And I try to watch these as little as possible, but now and then.
I can't watch, but there are times when I have seen, couple of times, they put the oil or the gas on and they just put the fire on the person and they just enjoy a live person burning and going to die. Peter,
the level of brutality and the way in which these people these attackers take so much pleasure in this sadism is deeply disturbing.
थैंक यू वेरी मच पीटर. अब मैं बताना चाहती हूँ कि पीटर की किताब जो है, जैसे हमने आपसे शेयर किया कि ही इज़ अ फ्रीलांस जर्नलिस्ट है, आपकी किताबें ऑथर है, स्पीकर है, ट्रैवलर. हैव यू एवर ट्रैवल्ड टू इंडिया?
Oh yes. Some of my favorite days have been spent in India.
Beautiful.
And I've been there. I would love to go back there today. I love India. I love the history.
We love India. We love India. There's a poem. I'm going to read that poem after the program with you. Peter Frederick की एक किताब है जो अब हिंदुस्तान में इनके आर्टिकल्स के साथ भी छपी है. So these articles are translated in other language or in English?
My articles are written in English, and I believe a handful of them may have been translated, but no, the majority of them.
Majority of them are in English, of course. Now the translation, and in India, people have very good English knowledge, and they can speak very well English. Now, book on the rise of Hindu nationalism available in India, or Saffron Fishes, India's Hindu nationalist rulers. इनकी ये किताब है Saffron Fishes. Please tell us something about this book, and then I'll thank you for your time. I said you 30 minutes, and we are around 45 minutes.
Well, this book is a compendium, compilation of my essays over the past and articles over the past year and a half or so, all on the theme of Hindu nationalism. My target audience, I have many Indians, many Pakistanis, South Asians who have very much appreciated it. But my target audience in particular is a Western audience. I want people who are non-Indian, who are not from South Asia.
So to make them understand what is happening in India.
Exactly.
Okay. Peter Frederick, I thank you very kindly. Thank you very much for being with us. And this is nothing against India. India and Pakistan, if things are fine there, it's a wonderful area. And because these agencies are active, they just want to stop people like myself. And they cannot kill me here. The only thing what they can do is they can stop my commercials. That's okay. How long I have to live? I'm not scared. India is a great country. It's only the leadership which is taking it towards the wrong side. Peter, I thank you very kindly, and I'll end my show with a poem, Allama Iqbal's poem, and I say thank you to you for your time again.
Thank you so much.
God bless you.